Abhishek.
Thank you very much. Okay, so there obviously Mohit has much more gyan than all of us, and he's putting things in an application which is tremendous. What I'm just going to show is a direct kind of a reply to the discussion we had with Mr. Rajesh Prati a couple of weeks back, and what we've done. It's a case study what we've done at the office, just to get few things right, and gives us a mental peace. Moji, can you put yourself on mute, please? There is a little background noise. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. All right, if everybody can see this, first of all, I'd just like to acknowledge that जो भी मैं दिखा रहा हूँ, it's all thanks to Manzil. There's a lot of learning that's happening, and thankfully we've been able to put some of it into practice. So the first thing, what we did, we were facing concerns about this typical entrepreneurial issue where we think we are much more of value than what we're being offered. So we took 5 categorical steps to address these concerns. And I'll run through some examples as I go through. First is benchmarking yourself with competition. This is an easier thing to do. Is one thing. How would you know what your competition is quoting? One very reliable thing is the vendors. A lot of the vendors that you have are common. You can easily get an idea from them. And there is a good amount of guesstimation, like we had discussed a couple of weeks back, that you can get. It's not an easy, if you know your industry well, it's not an easy, it's an easy task to do. The other point, coming back to, the other point is, please sort out your price list. You have to know, once you have your competition in place, you have to know what is your final negotiation figure or your starting figure, and what's the benchmark that's up to you. I've had so many conversations, and especially with people who are just up there doing the marketing for a company. How much is going to cost? Sir, मैं बताता हूँ. मैं senior से पूछ के बताता हूँ. We'll get back to you on this one. These are not replies. You have to know what you're selling and how much are you selling it for. So if a good structure, and for us, the problem is always economies of scale. So the larger the building, of course, the cheaper you are. But there are certain buildings that vary. So for example, what I would charge for a housing is very different from what I would charge for a sports infrastructure. It's very different from what I would charge for a club interiors. You have to stratify and be very sure which bracket you fall on. So what we've done during this lockdown period is not only program is this housing commercial complex, and also scale. We've stratified what we're going to ask for. So every time we are going for a conversation or pitching, we just look at that little horizontal and vertical to when we sit on the negotiation table, and we know what is the ideal fee we can ask for. So benchmarking is a very important thing. The other is, okay, so the other thing that, let's stick to the presentation, otherwise it's really annoying to go back and forth. The other thing is something that Moiji touched upon, is the niche and the one thing. So I'm kind of, along with what you do, I think you should also be very careful of what you don't do. So there is a lot of pressure in our industry to take up contracting along with designing, but that is something that we're staying away from, because it limits me on the kind of design consultancy I can offer. One pain point that we always have in our studio is residential. For example, a residential client is very different from a developer client. So this is where the creation on Avatar comes in. And what we've done is we've listed down very categorically the kind of expectation people have. So and one education process that we always do, what does an architect do, what does an interior designer do, and what does an interior decorator do? We always educate our potential client on the difference of these three services that are being offered in the market, along with contracting services. Contracting as in construction, ठेकेदारी. So what we've listed down for residential, which is our biggest pain point, most troublesome client, most troublesome avatar, is we've listed down what we do and what we don't do. And categorically at every stage of engagement, the blue is what is expected of the client. I cannot move ahead if this information is not provided back at me. And if you'll notice, this is residential interiors, this is residential architecture. For every situation that we can encounter, it is different. The stages are very different for interiors and architecture. So this is when you do your one thing, it cannot fall under a larger umbrella. So similarly, our fee and our terms and conditions also vary in residential, whether we're doing architecture or we're doing interior design. It has to be different. You have to go back to your drawing board, discuss with your team, list down your do's and don'ts. This is just an example. This is a combination of one thing and combination of a pitch deck. While we do deal in multiple design consultants verticals, we've created templates for different programs. So when I pitch for F&B, when I pitch for sports infrastructure, there are commonalities, but I categorically target that client. So if it's an F&B portfolio, my pitch deck is going to carry all F&B. He need not know if I do anything else. That's just thrown in as an extra. So what happens is that this is just an example of a template pitch deck that we've created. Again, this is lockdown. Always, what we've helped is that we always educate the client whenever we're sending a pitch deck about the history and our credibility. We have our teams in, we have our clients in, awards in. However, content page helps because if he doesn't have patience, he can just go down to the commercial offer and get to what he wants to see. We've got absolute typical introductions which are set. This is again a repeatable template. Like Mohit said, if you don't have your deck ready, if you don't have your background ready, nothing's going to help. This is where we educate. So if people who know us, I always say that please do not classify a designer with आपने स्कूल पहले कर रखे हैं कि नहीं कर रखा है, आपने क्लब पहले कर रखा है. It doesn't matter. We are trained in a manner to handle every scale. So this is where we kind of subtly put it in that it's not about program. A lot of designers categorize their websites and their pitch decks by the function. Malls 20, schools 3, stadiums 1. We classify them from scale, micro, from typical product design to large master planning 120-acre projects. It doesn't matter if it's a golf resort or if it's a stadium or if it's a club, right? Throw in your, of course, everybody throws in the clients. Throw in your associations. So we teach a lot. And we associated with a lot of academic institutions. So that helps lending credibility. Awards, obviously, everybody puts them down. One thing you miss out on, I personally think, is teams. What just happened? You have to educate. If you're charging a certain value, say you're charging 100 rupees and your competition, competition is charging 20 bucks for the same from the same work, you have to educate how are you standing out. And one of the most important things is the kind of people you're engaging, the immense strong support that you have in your office. It's not a cheaper support that you have in office. Your consultants always help in establishments. This is just an example of similar works. So when I'm presenting a one thing, this was a pitch for development for Cyber Hub. So Cyber Hub is a landscape proposal, essentially. This was. So we are only showing our works that cater to that category. End of story. This kind of generic stuff, fee is there. And the last bit is have the courage to say no. You should know when to say no. It's a stupid cliche nonsense, but more or less, it's essentially the service or the expectation that is going to give you discomfort. It's not always also on the price. I mentioned something about us not getting into contracting at all. There have been a lot of requests, even from fellow Manzil members and ex members from BNI, to get into construction, to get money. But the kind of discomfort that potentially gives us, we're not ready for it by a distance, and we will never be able to do the kind of stuff the kind of variety of portfolio that we have if we get into construction. So the last bit is you should be able to say no. I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you